Welcome to Two Doctors Homesteads. My name is Daniel. Today we're going to look at the process of dry packing foods, which is to say putting dry foods in canning jars and then removing the oxygen from the jars. There's some things to keep in mind. When you do remove the oxygen from the jar, you are producing a low oxygen or no oxygen environment, and there can be risks associated with that, particularly botulism. Botulism is something that could occur anywhere. It could be on anything, and when you put foods in any environment where it's a low oxygen, no oxygen environment, botulism can thrive. So when we're putting dry goods in mason jars and we're taking the oxygen out, you might actually be growing botulism in the jar. As long as your intention is to cook the dry goods that you're putting in here, that you're trying to preserve, you'll likely, more than likely, if you're cooking it at a safe temperature, you'll be okay. But always be aware. Always make sure your jars are clean, your hands are clean, everything you're dealing with is as clean as possible. But once again, I would not recommend dry packing or vacuum sealing any foods that you plan to just eat out of the jar. For example, crackers. If you're going to put a cracker in a mason jar and you're going to vacuum seal it, you might actually be encouraging the growth of botulism. And when you open the jar and take the cracker out and eat it, you could be poisoning yourself. So in this case, we're looking at a few items here that we're going to dry pack. One is malted meal. The other one's very similar, cream of wheat. As you can see right here, you have some non-fat dry milk. So the idea behind dry packing it, removing the oxygen, putting it in a sealed glass jar, should extend the freshness. Right? We're taking the oxygen out. The oxygen is what's going to help it go stale. It's going to make it dry out. Also, you have the risk of bugs either already in the product as eggs or possibly in the environment. If I just put this box in the cabinet, there's a chance, right? Not to say my house is dirty or anything, but there's a chance bugs could get in here and they could already be in here and they can hatch and spread out. So when you put it in a mason jar and you remove the oxygen, you're going to be killing any of the bugs. If you get enough oxygen out, even bugs need oxygen to survive. So that's the reason for wanting to pack it, extend the shelf life. All right, we're going to look at a couple different options here for dry packing your foods. One are oxygen absorbers. If you don't have a vacuum sealer, can't afford one, don't want to buy one, you can use vacuum sealers. You can use oxygen absorbers to remove the oxygen from the jar. So once you put your dry goods that you want to pack, you put the oxygen absorber in the jar, you close it up, and this will consume, it'll absorb all the oxygen out, creating a low or no oxygen environment. Another good thing to have are labels. You want to be able to remember what's in the jar, so this could help you out down the road. Once again, the idea is just to keep the food fresh as long as possible, keep the bugs out. But it is important to be aware that there are risks with putting the food in that low oxygen environment. So make sure you're only dry packing foods that you know you're gonna cook. You're gonna take it out and you're gonna cook it at safe temperatures long enough to kill any bacteria. Otherwise, you could be putting your health at risk. One of the other things I have here are silica packs. If you wanna go that extra level and you wanna dry it out as much as possible, you can put some silica packs in the jar before you vacuum seal it. All right, so two things we're looking at here for the dry packing. This is a food saver, wide mouth jar sealer. So it's a little bit larger and it's for sealing the wide mouth jars. And then we have a food saver regular jar sealer. Right, and this is for sealing the regular jars. We always seem to have a mix of canning jars, wide mouth and regular size. One note on the canning jars is you also want to remove or reduce the sunlight that gets to your dry goods. So you can see this has actually a coloration to it, should help a little bit to keep the sunlight out, where a clear one, not so much. So once you've dry packed the foods, you want to store them in a cool, dark place as much as possible. So when you're dry packing your foods, you want to make sure that your mason jar is not only clean but dry. Any extra moisture in the jar could lead to mold, and you certainly don't want your food that you're trying to preserve, get the freshness, maximum lifespan on to get moldy. So that's a good pointer. Clean jars, but also dry jars. Something else that might also be useful to have is a funnel. Just makes it a little bit easier when you're pouring things in the jar. It's a canning funnel, so it's got a nice big opening for your dry goods. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here. That's the process. You take your product that you want to preserve, and pour it in the jar. So in this case, we have a 1 quart canning jar, and we didn't quite get the whole box in. So if you look at sizing, this is 1 pound, 12 ounce box of cream of wheat, and it looks like it's going to take more than one mason jar. I'm actually going to put a silica pack in here. Just helps make sure there's no moisture that might cause molding, kind of reduce any moisture in the product. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go and put the lid on the jar, put the vacuum sealer over the top, and then my food saver has a canister button, so we'll just hit that canister button. There we go, vacuum sealer is done. Heard it pop there, so let's remove that. All right, now we've removed the oxygen, or at least some of it, from the jar. Once again, be aware, botulism thrives in a low oxygen environment. So by removing the air, I'm actually increasing the risk of botulism. I am going to cook the dry goods before I eat them, so that should mitigate that risk. But it is something to be aware of. At this point, put the lid on, put a label on, and you can store it for a long time. It's hard to say exactly how long, really depends on a lot of things, but it should stay fresh for a long time. All right guys, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see future videos we're going to create. And just to recap, dry packing, it's not the same as canning, right? You're removing the air, that will help maintain freshness. The jar keeps bugs and rodents out. But whenever you're removing oxygen, there are risks. There's a risk of botulism. So you just want to be careful, right? Make sure that whatever you're dry packing, you intend to cook. So, all right, thanks for watching.